Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Jack Draper is our 2025 Indian Wells champion after beating Holger Rune clinically 6-2, 6-2. He won his maiden Masters 1000 title in his first Masters final. Really impressive display from the Brit. It was a breakthrough tournament that included beating two-time Indian Wells champion Carlos Alcaraz, who was looking to make it a three-peat. He will also now be number 7 in the rankings, Jack, on Monday, which is today. And it's his first time breaking into the top 10. So a lot to take from this match. We're going to break it down in terms of how the match went and tactically how it ended up playing out. There's quite a bit to dive into, I have to be honest. I think Jack played a really good match. Holger, not so much. And, you know, my prediction in the video, I was stuttering over it and I thought, yeah, it's going to be Jack. And then I thought, you know, maybe I'm thinking with my heart too much. And then I changed it to Holger in 3. And obviously my heart was right in this case, which is not normally the case. But a very interesting final. It wasn't a thrilling final by any stretch because it was domination really from ball 1 from Jack. There wasn't a whole lot of wobbling on his side. And he didn't really feel a huge amount of pressure from Rune at any part of the match. So it was just one-way traffic, if I'm being honest. And there's a few things he did to put himself in that position. I think there's a few things that Rune didn't handle particularly well during the match, and he wasn't able to adapt as well during this final. Before we do get into it, though, remember to that like button. Do subscribe if you're new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Also, do click that notification bell so you get alerted to all new uploads. So, if we look into then the match, there's a few interesting bits to talk about. I think first of all, we can take a look at the Tennis Insight score, which I always like to have a look at if it's available, to see how someone played on the day. And it breaks it down with metrics out of 10. There's a few percentage metrics, but I don't really look into them as much. I feel like they're only good if you're looking at it from a comparative basis. But the metrics of shot quality, I think, are good. Obviously takes into account, depth, spin, speed, everything that you can think of. How close to the tram lines it is, how effective that shot is, the weight of it. And I think that's also catering in how the opponent is playing as well, from my understanding. I've asked them that question before. So his rating was a 9.15 out of 10 for the finals. A really impressive showing from him. Serve was at an 8.7. Return at a 9.7. Return was an 8.7 even. I was going to say 9.7. He played well, but I didn't think he was a 9.7 out of 10 return quality that we were seeing. But 8.7, very good still. Forehand was at an 8.4. And the backhand was at an 8.4 as well. So, look, an extremely solid final. And he played really well, I thought. And I was very, very impressed with how he managed to handle the occasion, for one. And two, how he composed himself as well throughout the whole of the match. In terms of tactically, what did he do? Well, there's a few things. I think he outserved Rune, hit his spots a lot better than him, and he kept Rune second guessing. The Dane couldn't really get a read on the serve, and I think it was a weird one because you'd think that he would eventually adapt and get to grips with it, but it wasn't the case, and he looked very, very uncomfortable throughout, hitting a number of shanks on return, a number of mishits, which just, yeah, you could tell that he hadn't got hold of the ball properly. The ball was swerving, it was dropping short. It just wasn't really having the effect that he would have wanted, and he just wasn't able to get a grip of that serve at any point, really. And that was, I think, a big shame for him because it just meant that he put a lot of pressure on his own service games. And, you know, I think there's a couple of games where he probably felt, oh, you know what, I can get a grip on this Draper serve. But I think the biggest stat here, which tells the story of Jack Draper's service games, is that he didn't have to save a single break point, right? And that's a big difference to the 6 opportunities that Jack had, and he managed to take 3 of them. In terms of the first serve, I mean, it was phenomenal. He only lost 2 points behind his first serve, so won 23 out of 25 first serve points, which is really impressive. Also 10 aces with no double faults. And actually, if we look at the, I don't normally look at this, but average first serve and second serve speeds, you'll see that actually Jack was hitting an average of 202 kilometers per hour in comparison to 193 for Rune. Average second speed 188 for Jack, 166 for Rune. So 188 on the second serve is big, is very big. And to me, that was a really interesting stat to read. And obviously kick serves are a big thing in Indian Wells. So generally speaking, you will see some pace off the ball on the serve, and that's fine. There's no issue against that. I think there's no reason why people shouldn't hit serves like that. But I think for Rune, what happened is he went quite safe on his first serve especially. And, you know, Draper didn't really have the same issues that Rune had on his service games. But then only won 59% behind his first serve, and then only 39% behind his second serve. So that is quite telling. There's a few reasons for that. And yes, it's to do with the potency of his serve, but also I think just the way that, I think the serve is to be fair, is the biggest factor here, because what it meant is that Jack was not really backed up at any point on return. He was pretty far forward, and you'd expect him to be further back, right, against a serve like Rune's at Indian Wells, especially when he can hit big kickers, etc. It wasn't the case. And then on the second serve, he really attacked it, and he took it early, rushed Rune, and Rune is a fantastic defender, but you can only do so much. Even on these slow, hard courts, if someone's hitting as cleanly as Jack has been throughout the whole tournament, and then is also able to hit the ball early, it doesn't put you in a good position in the rallies and in the momentum swings during points. It's not a good place to be. And Jack is one of those players who is able to still hit winners on these slower surfaces. Rune also the same, maybe not to quite the same degree, but he is there, and that does mean that you have to be careful, because you can't just expect, like against Medvedev, for example, Rune got away with some points where he was maybe playing a bit passively, but actually Medvedev wasn't really making him pay, and so Rune was able to eventually change the momentum in the point. Jack wasn't letting Rune do that. He wasn't letting up at all, and he dictated a lot with the forehand. The backhand was really potent, as we heard from the Tennis Insight score. So from the back of the court, he wasn't really giving Rune much to work with, and Rune was not adapting well at all, if truth be told. On serve, wasn't hitting his spots consistently. Draper was regularly capitalizing on safe serving, as I mentioned, and he's making inroads into the majority of Holger's service games. He always felt like he was in those games. Rune struggled, I think, specifically in the ad court exchange, which is actually something that in the past he's been very good at handling. But I think maybe with Jack being a lefty, and I always say that being a lefty on tour is such a big advantage if you can use your qualities effectively, and he does. Jack is one of the most, to use a very to use a term that's not the best term to use, and it's not really a proper term, he's the most lefty player out there, one of the most lefty players out there, in the sense that he really does play into the strengths of being a left-hander. The slicer out wide is really good, especially Indian Wells. He was ripping the forehand cross-court, almost Rafa-esque, trying to hit with as much topspin as possible, trying to make it really jump on the righty's backhand, because he knew, look, the courts are primed for someone to come in as a left-hander and just whip those forehands cross-court and make it awkward for a right-hander. And whether you're a one-hander or two-hander, you're not going to enjoy hitting those balls at shoulder height, especially with the amount of spin and pace he's putting on the ball. So, I think it was just a difficult day for Rune on the backhand side as well. Tactically, Draper did something quite interesting that you wouldn't necessarily think of. And normally you think, okay, well, as a lefty, you just go straight into the backhand. But I think he knew that Rune's backhand was and is very solid for the most part. So if he was going to go into the backhand side, he wanted to really get a ball that either he could attack with or get Rune on the run or make him feel slightly more uncomfortable rather than have Rune kind of camping in that backhand corner, which he'd tend to do, right? Because he knows he can defend the forehand corner relatively well. And he wants to hit more forehands than backhands, as do most top ATP players. So actually, tactically, Draper was going into the Rune forehand first to open up Holger's backhand side. So whether that would be a backhand cross court or whether it would be a forehand into out. And then what he would do, when he felt it was the right time to, he would then go into Holger's backhand side of the ad court with either that whipped forehand I was talking about, or potentially with a backhand line, but that wasn't really the case. And most of the time, of course, when he was going into Holger's forehand, if he'd go down the line, then okay, Jack's definitely going to hit a forehand cross. If he was going cross-court with his forehand, Holger, it depended on how good that forehand was, right? Because I think if it's a good forehand, then Jack would stick in that exchange with the backhand. I felt he thought to himself, look, I don't necessarily want to be in my backhand to Holger's forehand exchanges, but actually I back myself to be able to hold my own until I have the opportunity to either hit an into-in or into-out forehand or get a forehand it would be on the ad court for him. And he held up well in those exchanges there. And then eventually he'd go either cross-court with the forehand or he'd go into-in with that forehand into the ad court. And that was really impressive to me. And there were some exchanges where they were going Draper's backhand into Holger's forehand, and then eventually Holger just wasn't able to quite find the width or the depth on the backhand, and Jack would just open up on the forehand and go boom, forehand into in, and end up being a winner. Because what ended up happening is when you open up that backhand side, Rune is very good at trading in the ad court exchange, but when you open up on the forehand side, and then he has a lot of space on the backhand side to defend. As a lefty, right, that's exactly what you want. You want to then be able to attack that space, and that's exactly what Draper was doing. Rune's backhand did not hold up well generally throughout the match, and the errors were a lot higher than expected. I think his shot quality was really down on the backhand side, and the low quality balls that he was giving on that side, it just gave Draper a big edge in the final. Draper dictated from ball one. I have to be honest, even. And his calculated aggression and composure led him to hit 21 winners to 16 unforced errors in the match, compared to 7 winners to 20 unforced errors for Rune. So there's a big difference there. 21 winners for Draper to 16 unforced errors. So positive in that ratio. And for Rune, he was very negative at 7 winners to 20 unforced errors. So that's something to look into as well. And I think the biggest thing for me is that Rune didn't adapt. He didn't try to adapt either. He didn't change things when he couldn't boss it from the back. He didn't change tactic really at all. By the looks of it, he only came net 6 times and looked confused on how to handle Draper's game. And I think we know what Draper's about. He tried to play on the front foot, play aggressively, dictating the points, and Rune wasn't able to wrestle the momentum from Draper really at any point. And the lack of break points, or complete lack of break points, highlights that. So that was, I think, disappointing from my side to see Rune really struggle on that aspect of this. But look, I mean, we'll see how he gets on. It's a real step in the right direction for Rune. Hopefully he goes into the clay court swing in Miami with a lot of confidence and he continues to play good tennis. He looks fit and healthy. It's great to see him back on big stages, and we need to see him, right, in more of these types of matches, in more big tournaments, making deep runs. Holger, Jack, these guys, they need to win slams soon, because if they want to be in the conversation with the Carloses and the Yannicks, and they want to actually be seen as real contenders, then they need to really not just win Masters 1000 tournaments, but go on and win slams. But look, for Jack, it's a big week. And I think beating Alcaraz, the run that he had, it was really impressive. So, look, he only has positives to take from it. Interesting to see how he holds up in Miami now, the recovery time. We know that physically sometimes there can be some issues, so will he hold up okay in Miami? A lot of the times when someone wins a tournament or someone wins their first Masters 1000 tournament on the men's side or even a 500, etc., and they have a quick turnaround, they then tend to lose very early in the next tournament. So I'm not really expecting him to go and do big things in Miami, if I'm being honest, but we'll see how he's looking in the early stages. Guys, let me know your thoughts on the final. Thank you very much for listening. Stay safe and well, and we'll see you on the next video.